Welcome to the Drakos Dottir podcast. In today's episode, a focus on natural dying. And in compelling Chronicles, the first reenactment to take place this year is a rather salty fight for the homeless.
To make it not just about fun and games and, just two guys slapping each other for fun, we'd make a positive outcome out of it. So we are raising money for these homeless charities.
And in Meet the Makers this week, I talk with Kat from Medieval Colours about natural dying in the Dark Ages.
Let's take pink. Nowadays we think that it's sort of color for girls. In the early medieval, it was a symbol of a high status because you needed to take Polish koszeniel or a kermes, so some sort of bags. You needed plenty of them to have intense color.
And in Contemplation Corner today, I talk with Laura about neuro-linguistic programming.
They once did a lovely piece of research on people who won the lottery to find out if they were happier after they'd won the lottery. They're pretty much the same happy. They're just happy and rich. They were happy and poor.
What's occurring from the workshop? All right. From the workshop this week, a little about the natural dying journey I've started this year. I've had a couple of dying gurus on hand, thank you very much, to give me advice and encouragement, as well as Jenny Dean's book, Wild Colour, highly recommended. So first of all, natural dying means using plant pieces, insects, or minerals to dye your materials. And as I've discovered, it takes a lot longer than just throwing some dye on in the washing machine. Now, the plants to dye with, and yes, it is pronounced dye in Norfolk, thank you very much. If you look at the Latin name of the plant, and it has tinctoria or similar as part of the name, it has dyeing qualities in that plant. So to apply this to the Viking Age, we have to look at what plants and other natural dye sources would have been available then, either by growing themselves, trading, or foraging. When I first started dyeing, I wanted to play with the big boys. In the yellow corner, weld. Such a bright yellow, it's almost neon and can be found growing on the sides of the roads. Look for the tall flower spike. Use the green parts of the plant. In the red corner, and responsible for much of Norwich's trading from the Middle Ages to the 19th century, madder. Use the roots chopped or powdered. And in the blue corner, dressing up Boudicca's Iceni tribesmen for battle, it's woad, which is a hugely convoluted process to get the blue. It's honestly weird how anyone figured it out in the first place. Now I've started growing those 3 dye plants. While I wait for them to mature this year, I'm looking on the doorstep of the workshop at what I can harvest around me.
Natural dyeing, step 1. Find some nature. Nature. Natural dyeing stage 2. Collect nature. So here are some windfall pieces of the sweet chestnut bark from, it's a big hard limb, from Boudica. She is the big old tree in the forest. Let's go say hello. She's so pretty, look at that. She is so amazing. She had a couple of branches fall down in the recent winds a couple of months ago. So we've all been respectfully using the bits of her that have fallen away. and the bark is no exception. So I'll try not to take bark from a living tree, although there's lots of silver birches here and you can harvest safely from trees. I'm really aware of that I don't want to take more than I need. I don't want to take something that will leave a deficit in a certain area, and also the plant is growing there, or the tree or the shrub, the bush, the berries, because that's the ideal spot for it. It's found that spot and it likes to be there, and so I don't want to spoil that plant's chances. I think it's different when I'm cultivating dye plants deliberately. So I think it's more about keeping it sustainable. Don't take more than you need, and try and give back where you can as well. So for example, we make sure that we are putting fat balls and seeds out for the birds at the moment, and it's been absolutely wonderful. I can sit in the door of my workshop and watch them on the bird feeders. Just beautiful. Soak the bark for a week. Okay. See you next week.
I've also been saving the reenactor classic onion skins. Some other dye stuff that has been identified on textiles from the Viking Age are broom, heather, some lichens which create purple, and bed straw. Plenty to keep me busy. So the natural dyeing process can be days long. First, wind your fibres into skeins, looping it round, and you can weigh it as dry wool or linen into 50 gram or 100 gram bundles. I'm trying to figure out how much I need for a certain tablet weaving pattern, plus extra for tying and finishing. It's better to have more than you need to dye, because it might be difficult to replicate the exact same shade if you run out of wool. That's why wool companies online will tell you the dye lot number of the wool you buy, so you can order extra from the same dye vat, ensuring the same colour. So then to preparing your fibres, and wool, linen and silk all have slightly different preparation methods, which Kat from Medieval Colours goes through in Meet the Maker a bit later on. Basically, it's soaking, mordanting and then natural dyeing in a dye vat, so it can take several days. You should use about the same amount of weight in plant matter as the materials you wish to dye. And also, if you fill your dye vat up with fibres, the colour pigments will have to go further, and so the end result will be paler than if you restrain yourself and place fewer fibres in for a slightly more intense result. I've been using plant pieces or powdered extracts and pieces of bark. Some plants tolerate a higher temperature than others, but for example, if you boil woad leaves, then you'll destroy the dyeing pigment in them, and you'll get what my dyeing guru Jen calls surgical stocking pink. I done that. But other things like bark can tolerate being bubbled away for hours, and for my walnut dyeing, I've thrown some bark pieces into a deep saucepan, left it on a simmer for a while, then strained the coloured water off into a container, and topped up the bark with more water until I got about 5 gallons of the stuff. And a quick side note about berries. They might stain your clothing, but to dye with, they are really not light fast, meaning over time they will fade quickly. Plus, they don't always come out the exact colour you think they would. For example, elderberries, a lovely purple colour, come out grey. So most plant natural dyeing is done with the flowers, leaves, roots and bark. So after preparing, mordanting and placing your fibres in the dye vat, you could then add a modifier, usually copper or iron, something that will vary the pH of your dye vat and therefore the colour. copper usually adding a bluish tinge to the dye, and the technical term for what iron does is saddens the dye vat. Oh. Madder creates different shades of red, for example, depending upon the pH of the dye vat, which is why Norfolk and Norwich were quite famous in the 15th century for madder growing because of the clay soils here and the hard water. Don't know if I mentioned that, just saying again. And I've had modest green results from the nettles. The most effective I found by adding modifiers. So one nettle dye vat I added iron to, and the other copper. And you must be careful not to mix the spoons up. And also don't use them in your coffee. Don't be daft. So yeah, that's what I've got so far. Most of this is going into textile kits I'm putting together for Evesham Medieval Market in May, and I'll let you know how they come on. The next item on today's podcast luckily won't affect the pH of my dye vat, despite its salty content. Compelling Chronicles. Joining us now is the creator of popular reenactments online comic strip, GoatWorn ArmBand, who, as well as keeping the reenactment community entertained with salty memes, is now taking on Hereford's Anvil in a fight to raise money for 2 homeless charities. Here to tell us more about it, the GoatWorn himself. Hello, sir.
Hello. It's always fun to hear how different people refer to me. It's like, well, he's GoatWorn ArmBand. Shall we call him the GoatWorn or GoatWorn of the Armband? Like, what's the precedent? It seems to be a different one each time.
Well, I guess because the armband comes as like it almost feels like a surname. So
Yes.
maybe it's related to how surnames evolved. Is it where you live or what you do or what you look like?
I think I explained it in my most recent podcast when I actually did an interview with the Anvil, who obviously I will be fighting for charity.
So I'm looking forward to seeing someone eat some grass, and all bets point to.
Yes, I will admit it does look like an uphill fight for me if you go by the stats on our website.
So how did this idea come about, GoatWorn?
This came about actually during a podcast so obviously I run the GoatWorn Armcast, detailing all things salty and reenactment based. Mm-hmm. And we were having a discussion about other memes in our preamble before recording, and we'd actually been watching the video of the Anvil where he starches a guy out with his shield, and then followed by the medieval take on the coffin dance.
Yes.
Which is a spectacularly funny meme. And we had the joke that if I reached 3,000 likes on my comic page, I would fight him. And fighting the Anvil seemed like a good idea at the time. Now, having watched more of his fighting and his workout routine, I am sort of regretting that.
I've seen some of his workout routine. It involves hauling logs about when I say logs, I mean tree trunks.
Yeah.
Is that right?
He did show us this when we did a Q&A with him on my podcast, and it was just footage of him uprooting a tree.
Yeah.
But so we decided that was kind of the initial part of it. And then we chatted and worked out how are we going to do this? Are we okay with this? Shall we, what's the rules and regs and why should we do it? And then it came up in conversation between us that we're both quite passionate about the homeless and the homeless situations in both our respective towns. And he's actually quite well linked to the Crypt in Leeds. And I've on and off supported Path Devon in Plymouth. So we decided that, to make it not just about fun and games and, just 2 guys slapping each other for fun, we'd make a positive outcome out of it. So we are raising money for these homeless charities. It's been incredible, the generosity that we've seen so far. We're hoping that that's going to make a difference to some very needy people.
Absolutely. And how do people get involved with donations then? How's it going to work?
Basically, we've got a website called Fight for the Homeless, and people who donate will get access to the footage of us fighting. Obviously, it can't be live with current lockdown restrictions and COVID safety, etc., etc. But we will be filming it, having someone narrate over it, and then it will be presented to those who bought a ticket.
A brilliant cause, and I can't wait to see it. Now, how do you get around the situation, though, of you're from different time periods? Is the fight style difference? How's that going to work?
Yeah, so it's different and it's not. Technology-wise, we are from both reenacting different periods. He reacts late Norman, and I reenact kind of mid-Viking, like kind of 10th century. But technology-wise, the main difference is he's got slightly more mail coverage and obviously a much larger shield with the kite shield.
Oh yes.
But weaponry, it's still sword and shield. The armor is still padding and mail. He's got a slightly more restrictive helmet than I do. He's got that kind of bucket looking job.
That's really intimidating looking. I'm just going to say that there's something who's the Game of Thrones, there's something mountain-esque about it, isn't there?
Absolutely. That's why I like the spectacle helm of the Viking periods quite a lot, because once it covers that band between your mouth and your eyes, you can only see the opponent's eyes and their beards, or their teeth if they're just like growling at you or shouting or whatever. It's quite intimidating. It takes away a lot of your features and expression. When you've got a bucket helm that covers the entire thing and you can just vaguely see the eyes, that's intimidating. But on the upside for me, his vision is very restricted. So I'm probably going to Monty Python it and run around behind him. And we've settled on a modification of what's called Huskar rules, which is it's kind of a midpoint between Western style reenactment, so your average reenactment rules and regs, midway between that and Eastern. So there's a lot harder contact. You've got more hit zones opened up, but it's not quite the full welly that Eastern is. What's your reenactment kit going to be? For me, average 10th century Viking, specifically Norwegian. So I've got the Jernmanbu helm, the spectacle, round shield, sword, and mail. And I've got a woolen tunic that goes over my main tunic that gives me some extra padding under the mail. And so it's going to be a point scoring system to see who wins, or last man standing? It will be who gets the most hits in. Yes. But body shots will count for more, being that these would obviously cause more injury and are harder to make when it's all behind a shield. But generally speaking, it's volume of hits, and all hits do have to be made with intent. So it's got to be delivered as if these were intended to harm. So lockdown restrictions are you're allowed in someone's garden. When is it going to take place, this fight, GoatWorn? So all being well, it will happen in early April, and we should see the footage out and ready for people by the end of April. Because obviously we've got a film crew, we may have like behind the scenes photographs. We're going to do a few teasers. Yes. That aren't actually part of the fight, but are just part of the whole entertainment aspect of it. Yes. I won't be giving anything away unless eagle-eyed people notice that I'm posting from a hospital bed. Right. Yeah. We'll be keeping the Anvil posts him tossing some trees about the next day like nothing happened. There's a lot of things that we're going to do that will tease. but we're not going to please until the main video is actually out and ready to those who have obviously paid tickets.
Yes, of course.
And donated, because that's kind of the deal.
Well, it all sounds brilliant. Oh, I hope it goes really well and you raise lots of money. And I'll put a little promo link onto my page as well, and I'll get the details off you. So I don't know what to say to a warrior going into battle other than don't die.
Literally, they said the same thing on the radio interview I did the other day.
Oh yes.
So don't fear for me. I have my plans. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, and I can tell him how the grass will taste. It will be seasoned thoroughly with salt. Awesome fighting talk. Thanks for joining me, Mr. GoatWorn. Thank you for having me. Meet the makers. I'm now talking to Kat from Medieval Colours. Hello, Kat. How are you today?
Hello.
So much for agreeing to have a chat. I'm so excited to talk to you. I've been following you for like ages. How did you first get into reenactment and then doing natural dyeing, or did natural dyeing come first?
Well, I was always interested in a history, but I was mostly interested in this aspect of everyday life. So something what they don't teach you in school. They're talking to you about kings, about battles, things like this. And you have no idea how everyday life looked back then. So this is what interested me in reenactment. And I was always very fascinated in this aspect of everyday life and the crafts. So I did different things. I did a bit of spinning, I did a bit of needle binding. Natural dyeing was this thing which captured me for longer, because I'm a forager. I love just go somewhere out to forest and meadow and collect things. And I also love medieval crafts, so it's a perfect passion to join these two. And also, of course, you've got this symbolic aspect, because colors back then in medieval got this special meaning. Natural dyeing is a hobby which captured all of that.
Love that. What's the extra symbolism of the meaning of the colours then?
Well, the most known, I think it's known in some areas nowadays, is red one. It was very widespread all over the Europe that red is a sort of protective color. It can protect you against the evil powers. Let's say you've got a bit of red on your clothes, like a braid around your neck or in a belt. It's something what will ward off evil spirits. If you're ill, it's a perfect medicine for you. For example, you can take red thread, and if your throat is in pain, you can tie it around your throat. It probably was believed to work both for human or both for or animals. In some regions of Europe up to now, you can take red thread, and for example, if you have an orchard and you want to have plenty of fruits in oncoming season, you're just tying the red threads around the branches in your orchard. If this belief is strong even nowadays, you can imagine how much more intense it was in medieval times.
That's brilliant. Because I was imagining you were going to say something that the reenactors would say, like high status and that, but to bring that kind of mythology and folklore to it as well. Wonderful. I loved all that. Like a kind of fertility symbol and a protective. Love it.
Of course, some color were just poorly to show off that you're wealth. So let's take pink. Nowadays, we think that it's sort of color for girls, or Barbie dolls are pink, but in the early medieval, it was a symbol of a high status, because you needed to take a cochineal or a kermes, so some sort of bags. You needed plenty of them to have intense color. If you got a pink trousers, it was a symbol that you're very rich, very powerful, and you can afford to have it dyed in this color.
Do you know, that's so symbolic of so many things in history, that started off being a power symbol and have ended up being something completely different.
Yes.
I'd pick up on beetles there, if I may, because that is one thing that I've been following you with recently, is the Kermes. Now, people have heard of cochineal or red. So what's Kermes?
Well, this is also sort of beetle, and it was collected in areas around the Mediterranean Sea. There's a special kind of tree which is called, it is related to European oak, it's called Kermes oak, and these beetles live on it and breed on it. They were collected from the branches. Actually, people in the Middle Ages thought that they are some sort of grain. So mostly when you're reading about recipes for pink in old books, you can see mention about grain.
So small they look like.
Yes.
Wow, wonderful. So you got hold of a load of these. What did you do with them?
Well, actually, this is not a very hard dyeing though. You need to use a water which is as pure as possible, so demineralized. You need to pour it over them. It needs to be boiling, and you're leaving like this overnight. After that, you need to warm it a bit, and then you need to strain it. This is the hard bit because they are very tiny.
Yeah.
Then you can put your fiber into it. It needs to be, of course, prepared on a special way. The preparing of a fiber is the whole separate craft. And after that, you've got nice pink.
Wonderful. Love that. Do you ever do workshops, Kat, to demonstrate or help to teach?
Yeah, I do a lot of workshops. So this is something what I missed a lot through the previous year. But luckily I managed to organize some in autumn. Because it's wonderful just to share your passion. Especially there's one kind of dye which I like. When you're dyeing with wood, the whole trick is to put fiber inside and take it out, and you can see color changing on your eyes. Yes. And I always loved this moment during workshop. People are looking at that and everybody is suddenly, wow!
Like a magic trick, isn't it? I've only just got there. Be proud of me because my first woad has happened.
Oh, I know what you feel.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't know what they must have thought of in the medieval times. You can see why there's like a mythology around cauldrons and making stuff and herbs.
Yes, yes.
The things that you make are transformative. They just
yes
in front of your eyes. Is there anything else that you do that with dyes that does that? I know with modifiers and things can sometimes make colours change really intensely.
Yes, of course, wood has the biggest magic, but yeah. I like playing with modifiers as well, because with Mother, for example, you put alkaline and a modifier and immediately you've got purple instead of red.
As a reenactor, you're first told can't wear purple, you can't wear deep blue, and you can't wear deep red, and you know, because they're like at least the high status royal colours. I've been investigating lichen purple with that lovely long Latin name that I can't pronounce.
Evernia prunastri, yeah.
And you've been soaking it in water. What's the process with that lichen then to get the purple?
Well, it's very simple, because essentially you just need to soak it, like you said, with water. Also, you need to add ammonia. So in medieval times, they would just use stale urine, yes. Which was, of course, for free and available in a great amount. Very stinky, but well, it worked well. So you just need to keep it for long, long days, stir every day. And after some time, you just simmering it with some prepared wool or silk or whatever. And that's basically it. The lichen is said not to be very light fast, but I'm going to check it out. But I think it depends what do you do with these fibers after dyeing, because some people advise actually keeping it for a while, not rinsing it. apparently then it's quite light fast. I will see. I just want to try different methods. It was considered a good dye stuff. So if color would vanished immediately, they would not use it. So
thank you. And what's so lovely to hear what you just said then is someone as experienced as you is still on that path of, I'm going to try, I'm going to have a go. And that's the whole journey with natural dyeing, isn't it? Even if you try
yes,
maybe the same thing, you think, well, I might don't know how it's going to turn out. And that's exciting, actually.
This is actually the only way which we can investigate it. Just try and try. Like linen, I've got sort of mini obsession. I keep trying to dye linen. In reenactment, everybody keeps repeating you that there's no sense in dyeing linen because color will vanish almost immediately and it's not gonna be intense anyway. I keep playing with tannins. So, you know, this stuff which you can receive from bark and roots.
Yes.
And I think I finally got a recipe which makes linen quite light fast. Because we know for sure that people in medieval age somehow dyed linen. It means that we can rediscover it.
And that's so relevant to a lot of the reason why I'm wanting to talk to yourself and other makers is this knowledge people are suddenly interested again and wanting to know where things come from. And I think when you learn about the whole process of something, it gives you more respect to how your clothes are made, how your clothes are coloured, all those kinds of things. More value to it.
Oh yeah, because you know, you can realize how much time does it take to make a clothes.
So on the subject of linen, I see that you have also, one of your posts was different headwear. As that you've dyed silk as well. So what's the difficulties between dyeing the different substances? So wool, linen, silk, the ones that would have been available in the medieval times.
Oh, I could talk about it for hours. All right, so let's start from wool. When you have a wool, of course, it's naturally covered in lanolin. So you need to get rid of it, putting it with some pH neutral detergent, like a washing liquid. In medieval times, you could use some plant like soapwort.
Yes, soapwort. Oh, brilliant! Yeah.
It contains saponins, so it cleans your wool. And you don't need to be rough at it. You're essentially putting it into a bowl full of water and waiting until the dirt will dissolve. After that, you're washing it. And then you need to prepare it in a process called mordanting. Basically, it's a substance which creates a bond between a fiber and the dye stuff. In practice, it means that your color are brighter and they're just safe for longer there. And the most popular one in medieval was alum. It's a kind of mineral. It looks a bit like a salt. You're dissolving it in water. You're putting your wool there.
And I just to jump in there, I had a conversation with my mum about alum because she's a scientist. She understands all these things, and I said, well, where does it come from? Like you say, it looks white like salt. Where is it? Is it mined? And she said, in some parts of Europe, it's just on the top of the ground. It's literally like an alum field of.
Oh wow!
So
okay,
it really was readily available.
So silk. Silk is also covered in some sort of natural protective layer. You also need to get rid of it to dye the fiber, and you need to be slightly more rough with it. So you need to simmer it with a bit of something of saponins, but also you can add a bit alkaline stuff. In medieval times, you probably used ash or lye, some kind of stuff which you can have just from your fireplace.
Yeah.
And after that, you can carry on like with wool. You also need to mordant it and then dye.
Got to be rougher with the silk because in my mind, silk is delicate. It's, maybe break easily, but it can tolerate higher temperatures than the wool. That's quite fascinating.
You need to get rid of this layer, and it's harder than in a case of wool. So unfortunately, simmering it a bit is the only way. Linen is the most tricky thing because you need to get rid of dirt, of course. After that, you need to mordant it with tannins, which means that you need to have to take some bark, and you need to boil this bark for an hour or two, strain it, and you're pouring this liquid on your linen, and you're leaving it for several hours. I remember I left it for 1.5 days, so about 30 hours. This is the step when it's ready for mordanting. So you're washing it again, and you're pouring over it water with dissolved mordant, and you're leaving it for another 30 hours. Linen is absolute pain to dye.
Wow.
I mean, it's essentially not very complicated, but it requires a lot of time to prepare.
That's amazing, because I've just started some linen threads in my dye vat, and I think I might have missed a stage.
Well, you can give it a go anyway.
What puzzled me, Kat, about the linen, so if you're dyeing with a tannin, it's going to add so if you're pre-mordanting with a tannin, it's going to add a layer of sort of browny colour, or does it? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
so if you wanted to then
yeah.
dye a nice yellowy.
Oh, I know what you mean, and I thought the same. Also, you probably know Jenny Dean books about natural dyeing.
Yes.
So she advised actually to use different kind of tannins for different colors. I've got one piece of linen which I wanted to dye pink, so I've used birch bark for that. And I've got another piece of linen which I wanted to dye yellow, so I've used alder bark. And at the end, it turns out that color of tannins, it does not influence the final color. Oh, go experimenting. It's a great fun.
So let's talk about your shop. What other things do you sell in your medieval colours shop?
I've got a different kind of yarns. My favorite ones are chunky yarns. This kind which you can use for needle binding.
Yes.
And they are single spoon. They are from Shetland sheep, so I wanted them to be as much authentic as possible. They are dyed naturally. I also got some yarn which is Aran thickness, so it's not as thick as this Shetland one, if you want just do knitting or crocheting. Recently I also tried to put some accessories in the shop, so needles for needle binding, handles, spools, things like this. And because I got some surplus of natural dye stuff, I decided to put it in the shop as well. Things which I tried myself, I know that they are working.
Oh, perfect. So from your shop, you can get everything from sort of start to finish, more or less, have a go yourself or to buy a product. So what's next then, Kat? Have you got an event lined up this year? Are you going somewhere to sit in a field and reenact? Does something happen? What's next?
My dream is having a stationary studio, a place where I could have everything on a display, and people could come to me and we could chat about natural dyeing, and I could do workshops there. I'm also very happy because I will be half an hour for my favorite open air museum, Ancient Technology Center. I love them. It's an absolutely amazing place, and I was doing workshop there several times, so I hope for more cooperating with them in oncoming season. And I've got this big fantasy about setting up a big woad vat with urine. I would love so much to make it on the most authentic way.
That's why you need a reenactment, isn't it? So you can just say, let's fill this up and then come back and take it away. And the Ancient Technology Centre, what a place. And I very much look forward to seeing the outcome of your lichen dyes. And yeah, thank you very much for talking to me. Lovely.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
And we could have talked all day, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much, Kat.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Contemplation Corner.
I'm now speaking with Laura Spicer, voice coach, NLP practitioner. So, NLP, Laura, has interested me since I was working with young people, and I had a little book that followed me around for years called The Little Book of NLP for Teachers, and and I would dip into that because I was completely aware of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where the children have to feel safe and well fed and watered and all those things before they even, and their minds settled before they're even ready to access learning. Yeah, so would you be able to give a little summary of what NLP is, please?
I could. And in order to give you a summary, I think I'm going to quote from the co-creator of NLP, who defines it as follows. NLP is an attitude that leaves behind a trail of techniques. So the thing about NLP is it's a particular attitude. When you have that attitude, techniques automatically follow in its wake. So although there are some standard techniques which you'd learn on a practitioner course, it's an evolving field. It's not, and even the creators of NLP are not teaching the same things today that they taught 8-10 years ago.
Oh, and just to reiterate, NLP means neuro-linguistic programming.
It does, and it's a fairly good title for what it is, because it is about how our neurology is kind of running the show to a great extent. It's certainly part of it. And so are the words we choose. So the linguistic bit tells you that the words are important. And then the programming bit is that we can teach our brains and our bodies anything. In fact, we have no idea what we are capable of. And isn't that wonderful? We only know what we can do. We don't know what we can't do. And those can't do's and maybe can't do yet. But what neuro-linguistic program is a way of approaching primarily mental health, but it isn't only mental health. It's used in sports coaching. It's certainly, I mean, we've got a lot of people working with teachers now. More and more and more teachers have learned, because, when we speak, our words have to land, and then the other person or people has to do something with those words. And I can't really legislate for what you do with the words that I put out, but I have a good idea, because of my training, of how to use words in order to guide your attention in a specific way. But it isn't only about that, Jenny. It's also about how we talk to ourselves.
Absolutely.
Really, really important. It's not just the words, it's the way you say the words. Because I'm a speaking voice coach. And so this is a real specialism and a passion of mine. You can say yes in 10 different ways, and you will know what I mean. If I say yes, it means something totally different to yes.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's not just the words we choose, but how we use them. And by the way, for your listeners, that is true in esoteric practices. If you're saying something or intoning or casting a spell, it's not just the words. That Harry Potter thing is made up children's stuff. You can't just go ex Kelly Casco and something will happen. You've got to put something into it.
Intention is what you'd call that, isn't it? In sort of magical.
Yeah. Intention, emotional energy. There's all sorts that goes into those words that make them land. And of course, NLP includes hypnosis very fundamentally. So we use hypnosis a lot. But all communication is hypnosis. And one of the best things I learned when I learned hypnosis from Paul McKenna, actually, primarily, is that when people are talking to me, I now know how the hypnosis is working, what it is they're trying to do, and whether I want it. And you might not be aware of what you are allowing in particular at the moment with COVID. There's a lot of fear about. It's not, fear is not, well, it has its use, but I don't want to live feeling fearful. That doesn't feel nice to me. So I practice blissful, and I do it a lot. And I train my neurology to do it so that when I wake up in the morning, if there isn't something awful I have to deal with, I will be blissful. And I love that feeling. Why wouldn't you do it if you could?
Sounds absolutely fantastic. I love that. And you're so right about the way that we talk to ourselves. I spend a lot of time alone, and I'm not really a lonely person, but I do like people's company, and I can work happy on my own. I laugh with myself. If something silly happens, then I will laugh. And like you said about the slowing down now, we have had time to realise who we are again. What makes us feel blissful? What kind of things can we do to feel small sense of achievement throughout a day that has nothing potentially in it?
I know, it's a luxury. It's an incredible luxury. And I've loved this last year for that. I probably really had the most time with myself ever. I've got to know myself so much better. I realize slowing down and just, because, for example, not being able to travel far distances.
Yes.
What's happened is that I've really got to know like a small area. So, I know all the trees now and all the plants. I feel like I almost know every blade of grass. It feels much more intimate. And I love that. And I've realized that you can just keep getting smaller and smaller and simpler and simpler and slower, and you don't lose richness. In fact, if anything, the kind of rich quality of the moments is even richer. So I understand it has been really challenging for some people. And, I've had a lot of clients who've come to me going, help, because they're upset or they're fearful or they're freaking out because their business isn't going to run anymore.
Yes, everyone's coming from a different place, so everyone's struggle is personal to them. So if someone comes to you, Laura, with a situation, what's the first sort of steps that you might take them through on an NLP program to help them?
Yeah, well, actually, there's a standard first step when people come to see me. And it sounds really obvious and simple, but it's amazing how long it takes for me to get the answer. And the first thing I'm going to ask my client is, what do you want? Everybody comes to me because they know what they don't want. Right? I don't want to bite my nails. I don't want to take cocaine. I don't want to be depressed. I don't want to be fearful. Right? Everybody comes knowing what they want to stop doing.
Yes.
But until you know what you want instead, you can't just have a vacuum. And, happiness is not the prize you get for running away from pain. And that's a quote from Dr. Bandler, who is the co-creator of NLP. And it's a great quote. Happiness is not the prize you get for running away from pain. If you run away from pain, what you get is away from pain. What I want my clients to do first off is to establish for themselves what they want to aim at. And sometimes that could just be, an emotional thing. I want to feel happier. I want to feel more I want to be more productive, or, I want to feel more satisfied, or I want to like myself more. I want to be more confident. I get a lot. And that's great. Then I've got somewhere to work towards. So I will probably be clearing the stuff that they don't want, but immediately popping into place what they do, because the vacuum will not hang around for long. And I have watched people get rid of one bad habit and start a new one. What's the point of that? But I agree with you. I think, you know, this isn't about pretending that you feel something you don't. And I think it's really important to acknowledge the truth of what's going on inside us. There's no shame.
No,
It's just,
exactly.
okay, this
And
is what I'm struggling with right now. That's okay.
And I think that people are nowadays much better at expressing I am feeling this because, so I think that's really good.
I do too.
When you've got to the crux of what someone wants, Laura, how long does it take for someone to gain that thing that they want through your NLP assistance?
Well, one of the wonderful things about NLP is it's super fast.
Really?
And it's super fast. Look, NLP is not therapy. Let's start with that. And we call it education because it is an educative process. You know, if you get a piece of metal and you want to break it, okay, if you do it slowly, it bends. If you do it fast, now your brain patterns fast. Doing things slowly is unhelpful to the brain. You know, often it's just one session. And I've also noticed that having a little bit of continuity helps my clients, because one session and then just letting them go, they might not do the practices that I've recommended. So I do 2 or 3 sessions usually, very rarely more, except in my coaching. When I'm doing life coaching or high performance coaching, we might do 3 months or 6 months or a year. That's a whole different thing. But for remedial work, when you want to make a behavioral change, 1, maybe 2 or 3, and then back into the world feeling a whole load better.
It's literally life-changing in a short space of time.
I think it is invaluable. It was life-changing for me to a level I can't describe. A lot of my clients come to me and I realize that what they want to be is perfect. And I laugh because, tell you what, would you like to hang out with somebody who was so blooming perfect that you just felt all small and imperfect?
All the time and
I'm not perfect. I don't want to be perfect.
No.
Or if I ever do want to be perfect, it will be my last moment on this planet when I'll be lying on my deathbed going, I've reached my peak, I'm perfect. And I'll die. Until then, I'd much rather be kind of having something to aim for, having some fun, learning to do things better today than I did yesterday. So, you know, perfection to me is, you know, not anything. And because also I've trained a lot of people who get up on stages and speak, I have never seen a presentation or a training that has been the worse for mistakes or not being perfect. The only thing that really matters on a stage is the state you're in. And this is a word we use in NLP a lot, state, and we mean your mood, your state of health, your state of physicality, you know, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. The combination of all of those things in that moment is what we call state. And your state is contagious. So when you're on a stage, if you're in a great state, so will your audience be. And that's the only mistake I think people make when they're making videos too. You know, we watch a lot of videos these days, and you know, what's the difference between a great one that you last to the end of and one that you click away from after a few seconds? It's likely to be, you know, the state is probably in there, at least in your decision to click away.
And I'm so aware of that when I talk to people who are feeling distressed in the moment, that I'm thinking, well, what state are you in? But I love that, the state and the energy and the passing it on, the contagion. Your vibe attracts your tribe. If I say to myself, oh, I'm so rubbish and I'll never achieve anything, correct. I've just delivered myself a self-affirming prophecy. Whereas if I might say to myself, it's going to be tough today, I can do it in little steps.
I'm going to respond to what you're doing there. So I believe that we know when we're lying to ourselves.
Ooh.
And so I am careful about affirmations. There is a way of getting best from ourselves. So for example, if I have a tough day ahead, I might reframe that and say to myself, okay, this is going to be a challenging day. I wonder what I'm going to learn and how fast I could learn it so that tomorrow I'm even better than I am today. Or I might say to myself, I wonder how much fun I can turn this into. One of the questions that I was asked early on in my NLP training is, are you having enough fun yet?
Right.
And I think that's a really good question that we should ask ourselves every day. Because again, this isn't what's going on out there that makes the fun. And I've really learned that this year. And like you, Jenny, I make myself laugh a lot. And I have a dog and she makes me laugh a lot. Every time you laugh, you create wonderful chemicals, serotonin. And yeah, I think it's important to be honest with ourselves and then think about what we can do and what we want, rather than what we're afraid of. We are wonderful. If you've got a great imagination, that's a wonderful thing. But it also means you can imagine worst case scenarios. And my advice about that is imagine them, think about how you'll deal with them as best you can, and then forget about them. Because if you dwell on the worst case scenarios of stuff that hasn't even happened yet, there's a great quote. There have been many grim things in my life and most of them never happened. I could spend the next 20 years being terrified about something that I'm just going to have to deal with when it comes. And the truth is, often things that seem so scary, when you're actually in them, aren't quite that scary. But if you really drill it down, most people, they might say, oh, I need more money, I'm really poor. And you go, well, what do you want the money for? And if you keep going down that route, you'll probably end up with, I want to be happy. So why wait? And particularly for our kids, but for all of us. And I'm sure one of these days somebody will disabuse me of this idea, but I have the idea there's no such thing as win-lose. Right. I think there's either win-win or lose-lose. Mm-hmm. You can't win without me winning with you. You can't lose without me losing with you. And if I'm trying to win and make you lose so that I win, I've lost.
In fact, Laura, I'm the other way. I'll be up maybe arguing with someone, or someone's having a go at me, or it hasn't happened for ages, and I immediately go, oh gosh, I completely understand where they're coming from. Oh no, I can see that now. Oh goodness, and I won't stick for myself because I think, oh well, So yeah, I'm a bit the other way where
Are you empathic?
I'm empathic, and yes, it's
Me too.
Curse.
Me too. It's a curse and a blessing.
It is.
And I think the challenge for us empaths is to learn how to switch it on and off.
I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And in this time, in particular, I feel like I'm picking up on the energy of the country sometimes. And there are days when I literally am floored and I just think, I feel hopeless, absolutely hopeless. And I think, gosh, where is this coming from? Yesterday I was really productive and things were going on. And I have the same things to do today. And I can achieve, like you say, the small wins. I can be better at this today. And yeah, I was talking to another spiritual friend about it, and and he just said it's just the country at the moment, Jen. You're just picking up on atmosphere, white noise.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's very strong at the moment, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't want to pick up on.
Yes, yeah.
But there's, you can do that, Jenny, and that's a decision away. Is I don't want this.
Yes.
And you put up your good protection, and then you fill your space with white light and Disney sparkles, and you call in your spirit helpers and guides, and you lift your spirits, and then you can start to beam that out instead of absorbing in. And listen, it's not a perfect science, but it's a good aim. And I think also it's natural. I don't suppose anybody has achieved having a life without one duff day. We are all going to have days when that happens. And I think one of the things I've learned recently is to be patient. Because sometimes I say to myself, this isn't a great day. I'm not feeling blissful today. And, I can't find my hope, and I can feel the weight of all the heavy energy that's flying around at the moment. And I just kind of sit it out now, because I know that it will pass. It will pass.
Well, what you said there was really interesting, Laura, in that you're able to acknowledge this is just a temporary feeling. And I think that's where the difference is, isn't it? You're able to say, hang on a minute, I am feeling this, rather than be stuck in it. And so as soon as you can start acknowledging or identifying that you're feeling that way, then you can do something about it.
Absolutely. And another way that I've described NLP in the past is to call it the planning department.
Yes.
So you've reminded me that one thing that I do most nights is that as I'm falling asleep, I make a plan to wake up feeling great. Because just telling your brain, and the way you do that is you imagine it. You imagine how it's going to be when you wake up in the morning, and you stretch and you lie there and you notice how lovely the duvet feels, or whatever it is. And then you leap out of bed feeling excited to start the day. And just that 5-second process before you go to sleep at night, that little decision, I want that for myself in the morning. At least it gives you a good start to the day. The other thing I'd say is, sounds silly as well, that after my husband died, it was pretty hard to feel good, actually. And life got really, really hard. And every day I used to go and stand in front of my bathroom mirror and do 7 really stupid, cheesy grins. And it was always 7. And sometimes I'd actually manage to laugh at myself, other times not so much. But you see, we're a good feedback loop. Our bodies are feeding back to themselves all the time. And even if you don't mean that smile, when you use the muscles that make up a big smile, even if it isn't a real one, you do produce a little bit of serotonin. So I used to start my day with 7 big grins on purpose, because that would just lift my spirits enough to kind of make a start. You've got to find what it is that gets you feeling good, and then practice it, because that's how you get good at it. So I think really I've kind of covered the kind of meta level of what NLP is about. It's really fun. I find it hard to talk about it as work, because it's my best fun. And I just love working with my clients so much. And we always have fun together. And there's something so incredibly rewarding when somebody goes, I can't believe I haven't felt so good for as long as I can remember. Thank you so much. There's something so rewarding about that. So, we all win. It's a win.
Win-win together. I love it.
It doesn't really matter where you are. It's about where you're going. And, by the end of a session, you will be going somewhere that you're happy with. And I love being part of making that happen for people. It's a very rewarding job. So I'm very grateful that that is my job. And lovely to share some of it with you.
I've enjoyed every moment, Laura.
Richard Bandler himself has written a number of books in recent years. Using Your Brain for a Change is one, but more recently, Thinking on Purpose.
Oh, yes.
And it's a fantastic book with, one chapter and an exercise so that you get the information and then you do the thing he recommends. And just that book alone, I think, could be life-changing for people.
Thank you so much for connecting with me, and I can't wait to put this out, really. Yes.
If people ask questions underneath the video, I will answer them there.
Oh,
so, with pleasure. So that's another way to get direct contact with me. If anybody has a personal struggle or issue and they're wondering what they can do, particularly at this time, then I might be able to offer them some counsel or point them in the direction of a good thing to watch or listen to as well. When I get enough people asking for stuff, I do group stuff on Zoom, and then I can do that at a really good price for people. Yeah. So there are lots of ways to work with me if people want to. And most importantly, I'm on this planet to offer myself in service in whatever way is useful to people, as I'm sure you are too. Yeah. I think that makes me feel happy. So if there's anything I can do to brighten someone's day, then they've got lots of ways to ask.
You've brightened my day, Laura. You definitely have. This has been a real highlight. Thank you so much.
Lovely to talk to you.
Next week's show, I talk with Becky, local heritage guide, on how Yarmouth is linked to the Salem witch trials.
Of the accused here. So, and what their charges were. So you had Mark Prime, who was charged with the use of witchcraft to bewitch one Robert Howlett, the son of John Howlett, and the use of sorceries to find lost property.
I talk with my dying guru, Jen, from the Fibre Workshop, about a Norfolk horn sheep and the worsted weaving industry.
Or we had an astonishing amount of freeholding peasants. So we weren't really subject to that kind of manorial control that was going on elsewhere.
That explains so much about Norfolk people. And in Contemplation Corner, Shirley with her emotion code therapy.
Because you can just pick stuff up. If people are feeling a really strong emotion of something, it can be absorbed quite easily if you're like empathic.
You've been listening to a Drakos Dottir podcast for entertainment purposes. A massive thank you to all my guests today. All music for the podcast series provided by the amazing Dark Bardess. Find her on YouTube. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to your company next time.
Of silk and fair feathers, I dreamed